Hey, Julia.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm very happy to have this time with you, Ed.
Where are you?
Currently in London, beautiful weather. We're having a really, really nice time here in June, 30 degrees almost, so enjoying it. Yeah.
I'm in North Carolina and we're about to have a storm. It's
Oh
coming in from
gosh.
the northwest and yeah, it's dark cloud. So hopefully it won't disturb us, but
Ah,
it could. It looks like a typical summer thunderstorm.
okay. Okay.
So uh, you have an American accent though, right?
Yeah. American schooling for most of my life. So hence the accent never changed. I've been in London for the past 8 years, though it
But
stayed with me.
were you born in America?
No, I have not. It's an interesting story. So I have Polish roots, Polish, mostly Polish family, but my upbringing was in an international space. So even though I've been in Warsaw, I went to an American school for most of my time, and
Oh,
that's where a lot of the schooling, a lot of the learning happened for me. Um,
that's
so
great.
so hence, sorry,
That's great. That's very good.
thank
So
you.
you've had an unusual life then, haven't you?
Oh, it's been a roller coaster of amazing experiences. I've I have half I mean half of my family is based in Cologne in Germany.
Uh-huh.
The other half is close to Warsaw. It's they're based in a smaller town known for Copernicus and gingerbread cookies, which is a lovely combination of science and creativity. Um, and yeah, and now it's London, which if you asked me a decade ago, I probably would not expect myself to find myself here. I was very much thinking of heading to States for my undergrad, um, very much looking at the Ivy League, but then a lot of different strands of coincidences happen where I realized I might want to move away from going into a very traditional business background, going for a business administration degree, as I am a little bit of a creative at heart,
Yeah,
but also very much in that business mindset that comes probably from my dad. He's an entrepreneur. So it was the creative side, I don't know where that comes from. It was always there. And back at the time when I was trying to go for a degree, it was hard to find something that had both that creative design side and business. It wasn't that well known. It wasn't a thing in a lot of universities. So the business universities usually had a very much a clear linear career path, whereas creative universities, they were not very much behind adding business into their degrees. And I did find two universities, one of which was in Canada and the other one was in London, University of Arts London, that had something called design management. And it very much aligned with my thinking, and the rest is history. So now it's been London.
I got a lot of questions. First off, who connected us together?
Well, that's a serendipitous moment. I've watched one of your interviews with Andy Wilkins
Oh yeah,
a few years back. Then I saw another one a few months ago,
yeah,
and I was in this decision-making
right.
point of my life where I wanted to focus and upskill a little bit more into like that healthcare sector. And I watched it and I really, really, I stood behind where Andy was thinking.
Mhm.
So you pushed me to apply for a program at Imperial that Andy created. And then I did mention to
Okay,
him, by the
chills.
way, I watched Ed Brenner's podcast with you, and that's somewhat partially why I'm here. And
Oh
then
my
during the
goodness.
program, I got an invitation on LinkedIn from you. So I was like, this is serendipity. So just wanted to thank you.
Well, I saw that you had said that about the podcast, and I am I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to you.
Oh,
You make me feel like all the effort that goes into producing this is worthwhile, and
it
that
is.
it is. I mean, the point is that in effect that the podcast introduced you to Andy, and it introduced you to something that, and that's the idea. I mean, this is a networking through introductions. But that's cool. I'm sorry I didn't know you 3 months ago because I was in London in March.
Oh, you were.
I was, and we were.
Well, if you're planning to be back,
Well, I always plan to come to London. Yeah, I'll come back. I'll come back and see you.
I would love to. I would
And
love to. And I've
we'll
got to
go hang
say,
out.
yeah, yeah. I've got to say, you have a very human way of approaching interviews or just having those chats rather than interview. I would say it's a very, very human way. And it was such a, I think people open up very quickly and it becomes very natural. So I think that stood out to me when I was watching your chat with Andy. And it was so nice to see the thinking change over the years from Andy's side. And I did tell him it was
Yeah.
really
Oh yeah.
lovely
Oh
to
yeah.
see 5 years ago where he was heading with this thinking and where he is now. It's like a lovely, lovely, lovely space to see that.
It is a beautiful thing, and you're giving me. Well, let me just tell you this. I mean, there's some people that know what I'm about to tell you, but I'm being pushed to expand what the Eddy Network podcast does. And in what this little group of people here where I live in Winston-Salem is wanting me to do is to do live events.
That's amazing. That's a lovely direction.
Well, I did one there in London a year and a half ago, in October of 2024. I was there for, you know who Ian McGilchrist is? You know that name?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. He had a 1 day conference there in London. I came to the conference, saw a bunch of people like Andy, and Andy and I hung out at the conference, and then I said, well, I'm coming. I might as well um, let's see how many people I can gather together from my list of people that I know in England. That was about 40 people. And so I sent them a note, said, I'm going to be at the Crown Pub in Covent Garden at 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Come and join me. And this will be an Eddy event, which means that there's something to it. There's something to this, but we don't, it's unscripted, but we don't know what it is, but there's something to this. And so 7 people showed up. I did a little 5, 6, 8 minute talk about the podcast and, just kind of introduced. Then I said, let's just talk. And so we were there for 2 hours talking. And what it turned out was a lot of these people knew each other, but had never been together, never physically been together. And so it was such a cool thing. And it convinced me, okay, I can do this. The trick is how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
will people pay to go to an event where there's no agenda? Uh, Let me interrupt here. You should go to events where there's no agenda. It's more interesting than the agenda itself. Just so that you know. So,
I was about to say, I think it's the people behind it that make it worthwhile. I don't think it's the agenda. A lot of the times,
yeah,
just thinking now, a lot of the events that I go to or congresses or conferences, as much as I appreciate the amazing formatting and amazing marketing that goes behind it, I look at the people who are going to be there because those are the people that I want to connect with,
oh yeah.
and I stand behind what they do, and I already know it's going to be worthwhile, even if it's not the topic that might not be, just up my alley.
So now that we're about 10 minutes into this, we should introduce you. So Julia, who are you? And tell us something about yourself that um, distinguishes you in the world that you live in.
Wow. Wow. Let me,
Because I think you know what distinguishes you. I
that's,
get that vibe
yeah.
from you that you really are clear about who you are. So
Oh, I
I want to
appreciate
know
that.
who you are, and
Well, I
that's a treat.
appreciate that. I've already mentioned a bit, which is that international upbringing, which I think is quite interesting. So, as I mentioned, I was born in a pretty small town uh, in Poland, known for Copernicus and gingerbread cookies. I then went into American school, and that's where most of my education happened. I spent the last 8 years in London, which by itself has so many different stories there. But I think my career path is kind of a highlight right now. And I had that conversation yesterday. I was invited to an industry event for a MA innovation management course at UAL here in London. And I think it's such a winding path that I've been on for design, business development, strategy, and now innovation in third sector. So just to go back maybe to the early stages of where I started doing design strategy in commercial spaces. So I worked in a very non-sexy brick and mortar sector for stainless steel trading. I went through
Hmm.
working with Selfridges here in London on different concepts when it came to their design and sustainability spaces. But throughout that journey of going in and also touched a little bit of tech world, working with a software house here and there. It was a lot of business development, design strategy in the earlier stages. And throughout that, there was this little side gig that I was doing, which was doing a lot of pro bono community focused work. And at some point, I was a very type A workaholic, a little bit of a person. I realized I'm getting burnt out very early. I'm still in my 20s, but I started to get burnt out very early on. And I was doing work which I thought Julia from 10 years ago would love it. I was right where I wanted to be, but I wasn't. And at that moment, it wasn't a light bulb moment. It was a decision that was just brewing and brewing through the work that I was doing on the side. I realized I want to work for impact and not specifically only for profit. I'm not saying no to profit, but I'm just also not saying to nonprofit fully. And an opportunity came, it actually came to me a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, for an innovation position within a third sector space. And I fell in love with working for accessible design, working for people. So right now, I work in a Royal National Institute of Blind People. We work with pan disability, a lot of access to health, a lot of access to transport. And it's been a love at first sight so far. And alongside that, to add another layer of complexity to where I am, I've had my own lived experience of in the last year and a half, actually, again, of being diagnosed with a chronic condition. And that turned my world upside down. And I started to get more and more into regenerative health, healthcare, understanding the conditions for making health more accessible every day. There's more there, but that's a little bit of a messy background.
You I, I don't want to be I don't want to overstep my boundaries here, but you remind me of many people in your generation who have made the decision that whatever came before that is sort of thrust upon you, you're going to ignore as much as you can, and you're going to follow your own path.
It sounds easy, but in practice,
It's not, it's not. I know
oof,
that.
oof. Especially I think because of my personality. I think one of the, if you looked at the superlatives for my high school, it basically said most likely to be your boss in the future. And I laughed at it because my mom actually found our yearbook when she was cleaning up not so long ago, and she was like, look at it. She just like sent me a picture, most likely to be your boss. Like, wow, where am I right now? And it's so interesting because I always thought like I'm gonna big four, I'm gonna do my work there, I'm gonna love it, it's gonna be amazing. And working in commercial wasn't, it just wasn't it. It wasn't. I had an idea of what it's supposed to be, and it broke in reality at the point where I was.
Your
So
your story mirrors my story.
really.
When I went off to college in the fall of 1971, so that gives you an indication of how old I am, I found that the coursework was not really oriented towards what I could do well in. Because I didn't read, I was not a fast reader. And when I would read, I'd read a sentence and I'd think about it, or read a paragraph and I'd think about it. I was constantly, and so if you had a 500-page history book you had to read, it was impossible. And, um, and I was close to flunking out after my second year because I just couldn't figure out how to make this work. And finally I pulled it all out of whatever they call that. But what I discovered was that I think very broad and a very big scale on a very big scale, and that everything I was being taught was very minor, well, not minor, but very small and self-contained. Very minimalistic is maybe a better way of saying it. And I was a big picture person. I ended up as a American Studies major, which really meant I could study anything I wanted to, which is what I did. But what I found was all the jobs that were available to me in the 1970s and then in the 1980s were really poorly suited to me because I wasn't going to follow the regiment of what was required to do this job. I was going to constantly be creative, and it really was about how am I going to be engaged with people and talking to them all the time. And that's the shortest version I can give you to why I'm doing this today with you, which is to have a
That's
conversation.
beautiful because that was one of the questions I was about to ask because it's such a, you've been on such a journey even with this podcast. I'm not sure how many, probably over 300 I'm assuming episodes
Uh,
that you've done.
Monday, I posted the 350th.
Oh, but I fully understand what you're saying there with people and engagements and understanding that. I mean, I've been going on my own journey of understanding what really means to work on systems and innovations in practice. Because as much as you have so many amazing people working on lovely, lovely frameworks and doing more research and development, a lot of the times it still is the individuals in the systems and understanding how to create conditions for change when it comes to trust, relationality. Um, yeah, it's so vital. It's very much vital, and a lot of the work that I've been kind of taking on is stands behind a concept of design thinking. Uh, it's been going on for ages, but I
Would you
think and
define that? Would you define that for us? Because
this is a very, very good question. It is a, you could call it a problem-solving approach that works on complex issues, wicked problems. A lot of times you call them that, and you put people at the heart of it
uh-huh.
in a very simplistic way of trying to explain it. You have loads of models behind it. You have Google Ventures developing things like design sprints. You have a lot of different cool things that stand behind design thinking. But at its heart, it's working with empathy and curiosity to work on complex problem solving. And as easy as it sounds, that empathy part and bringing different varied perspectives is hard a lot of the times. And a lot of times when you're working in bigger organizations, the maturity of understanding what we're trying to do with it is not there. So you need to start at baby steps.
I totally agree. I see that, and it's what I've watched for, well, next week it'll be 73 years. And what I see is that people tend to give up their humanity in order to work in these organizations, and they follow the rules. And by following the rules, they if they feel it's safe and their position is protected, et cetera, et cetera. But but I think, and the reality is that if you're going to be, that the real safety is with those who are creative and who
Oh,
are
100%.
constantly creating the positive changes that need to happen.
I've been thinking a lot because I've been asked a lot of the times in the past few months what innovation is to me, and I think it's like an organized curiosity with purpose.
Oh,
It's a
I
new
like that.
definition.
That's really good. I like that.
It's a new definition. I usually switch it up a lot, but I think it's a beautiful way to present it. And I a lot of the times in the way that I work on design thinking, innovation, I work a lot with executive and senior leadership. And I think the people that are standing out to me are those who lead with curiosity. And a lot of times those are not they don't have to be the smartest people in the room. I think genuinely those are more than often people who can create enough trust and clarity and just curiosity so everyone can do their best thinking. Um,
I've had some very, very intelligent people on the podcast. And some of the people who were introducing me to them warned me of that. You need to be prepared because he is extraordinarily intelligent, and you don't want to look like you're out of your class. I said, don't worry. I do my
that's an
preparation.
introduction.
And the person we're talking about is Ola Folk Kirkeby, who is a philosopher and business person in Copenhagen. And I was told you really need to grasp his core concept of the Inventium. I said, okay. So I bought two or three of his books and read them, and I said, oh, this is. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying, but I already, yeah, this is the way I look at the world, you know. And so when Ola and I were having this conversation, I said, "Well, let's talk about the Inventium," and it was like, okay, it's like old friends talking about this thing that they both knew everything about, and it was a pleasure. So I think that's experience is a great teacher if you allow your experience to teach you.
No, 100%. 100%. And it's having that, I think a lot of the times, um, at that level of leadership, I think I'm so happy where people can still ask questions with a beginner's mindset. So it's this, it might be a contradiction, but as much as they have loads of amazing experiences, it's still holding that beginner's mindset. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm happy to ask questions. Hey, this innovation thing is new to me. I'm just letting you know. I know you're going to do your best, and I'm going to fully be in it. And I'm not going to bring an ego to it.
Can we do a uh, little game here, or not a game, but a little. Let's. I mean, since because this is present on my mind, but I think because of how you came to me through the podcast itself. Let's say I'm hiring you to help me figure out what to do with the podcast beyond what it is. So
Mm.
what would you ask me? What were the questions you would ask me so that we could see something, I could see something I can't see because I'm so close to it. Can we do that?
Mm.
How about
That's
that?
amazing. That's a very, very hard and lovely question that you just posed.
Make it
I
simple.
think
Make it simple. Just simple. Make it
Okay,
simple.
let's go for a few different questions.
Okay.
So, if you were to describe your experiences in that podcast in one word, what would it be? That's the first very simple
Um,
question.
love.
Love. Okay, amazing.
Because I don't have to explain it, but I am going to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Because these people that come to me, they tend not to be stars. They tend not to be celebrities. They tend not to be the people who have been recognized. And they're getting recognition, they're getting acknowledgement, they're getting appreciation, they're getting affirmation. And their response to me fulfills what I feel, which is I want to love these people not as in some kind of other way, but in a way of one human being to another, expressing to them, I really like who you are and I really support what you're doing and that sort of thing. So
Okay,
that's a
my
way of
follow-up
describing
question
love.
was something that you probably already answered, but it was why can't AI do what you're doing right now? But you somewhat
Oh,
answered it.
that's a very good question, and I've thought about it. Um, AI cannot do that because it assumes that the answers are abstractions. And I don't think AI can ask questions um, that don't end up in an abstract answer.
Could you expand on that?
So you've described your childhood and your young adulthood, and you've described all these things that you've gone through, and those are kind of points that you could points on in the timeline of your life. But you've also said it in ways where you have expressed in your through your body mannerisms, through your face, the smiles, the way your voice appears in ways that point to joy and happiness and surprise and fulfillment and all those things emerge in a conversation between two people. And I don't think it's very easy to get that from. I mean, I use AI. I've begun to use AI, and I get affirmation,
Mm,
but I see it as as that person who will always tell you what they think you want to hear.
mm. Okay, I hear you. It's what I'm hearing here is the nuances of human experiences that have to be conveyed through having those conversations with another human being,
Yes,
um, which is amazing. So, my third question for now, there are probably some more, but my third question for now is knowing where you are right now, going through those 350 um, episodes of podcast, you're in this kind of maybe a crossroad, maybe you're very much clear on when where this is going next. What would you say now is the intention going forward that you want to lead with for having those human connections and experiences for those conversations?
it's a great question. Fantastic question. Some of the things I've read have suggested that within a matter of a couple of years, all of social media will be AI driven. And so, what is the alternative if everything is AI driven? And so we have to figure out something where human beings actually talk to one another. And I have done that. That's what we're doing here. There's nothing, I can honestly say, there is nothing about AI that has ever crossed the screen of a Eddy Network podcast. Now I've started to receive the transcripts from the conversation. But that's a simple thing. This is not asking it to interpret that. So I see that the opportunity is for ways for people to talk with one another, and
Mm.
and that's happening. I mean, there are a lot of conversation groups that are out there. A lot of Zoom groups. I've been in a lot of Zoom groups where people are talking. They meet every other week, or they meet every week, and some are organized, some are not very well organized. It doesn't really matter. The people know each other. They're talking with you. They're supporting one another. So I think it's really valuable. I think it's really valuable, and I hope that they would never ever stop. But my guess is that as we go through all this process, that our expectations will grow and we want more. But the question is, what is more? And I think what you and I are doing today is the more. Because what I want to know is I want to know Julia as someone who I can champion. When someone says, "Oh, have you ever met anybody from Poland?" I said, "Yeah, I met this young woman from Poland named Julia who's just amazing, and I think I'll introduce you to her."
Oh, I appreciate that. No, I think if you're able to listen back to what you just answered in those three questions, and I'm just putting some note, I'm a very much an old-fashioned sticky notes, paper and pen person. As much as I work in innovation, I know. I still love handwriting my thinking. And I think the question that you posed was just what is the alternative when everything is AI? I think it's the question that follows for me is how do we create a, a conducive condition for holding human experiences? And I think another follow up to that is how do we scale that?
Hmm.
And that's a $1 million question to me. It very much is. Um,
Well, funny that you mentioned that. The topic of conversation with me and other people this week has been about how do you scale um, the network that has formed through the Eddy Network podcast. So, it's not 300 people yet, but it's close to 300 people who have been through this.
mm,
And
mm.
and if you know network theory, which I think people should know network theory, um, one of those principles is that people can manage about 150 people in relationship. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So if let's say you have 150 people that you really are close to, and that I mean, if you texted them this afternoon, it wouldn't be a surprise. They would know, oh yeah, Julius, yeah, hey, how you doing? Yeah, that's right. So you have 500 people. Say the other 300 people all have 150 people. So you take the 300 and you multiply that by 150, and you end up with 45,000 people. Now the 45,000 people won't know who I am, but what it is, and I think this is the key, is that when we introduce one another to people that we feel like they need to know, then we are linking networks together. We're not simply linking people together. And if we really practice this idea of introductions, then we begin to see that our networks have a far greater reach than
I love
simply
this.
our relationships.
I love this, but I'm going to bring my little cheeky innovation hat on where I always flip things around on its
Okay,
head and think
please do.
about as much as we have those people in our circle of the network that we're creating, I think you have to be receptive to the concept of this network to be able to participate in it. And as much as you're having those amazing conversations, I think we're in a crazy, crazy time right now. And I'm seeing it in my own circles where we a little bit of that human connection is lost. And if somebody is already a little bit on that deficit side, you need to get them to baseline so they will be able to go into that surplus of being an active participant of the network. And I don't think we're talking a lot about it. We're just more, I think we are very much framing it as a reality of, well, it is AI, it is another whatever global disaster, it is another thing, it's another way we're shaping social media. But we're forgetting those are individuals who are there and they need actionable steps to get back to a baseline so we can then have something that's going to be there for us to create in that surplus. I'm not sure if that's conveyed well, but I think that's another side of this.
So, let me ask you about your circle of friends, your network. Would there be a spectrum of, say, intensity of connection to you? Some of are less connected than others are more and more. Is there a spectrum there that you can see, or is that just the wrong
I
metric?
think it's a different spectrum. I hear you. I hear you on the connection of, not all of the connections are close. I'm thinking more from a side of people using they're losing their human touch with
Yeah.
human experiences. And as much as we might be very close as a connection, I think it might not be soft skills per se, but I think there is something where we are right now where it's harder to bring people back on board into those networks and communities. There are amazing people, and don't get me wrong, now it sounds like I don't have an amazing circle of connections, but I have amazing people in my connections where there would be very much up for being part of this bigger creation and opportunity for human experiences. But I see a trend.
Let,
Um,
let me ask you this. Um, do you think this is a conversation you would like to have with your circle?
I'm already having those conversations. I'm having them quite often, more now, and I love my generation, but I'm seeing a lot of struggle in that generation per se in having those deeper human experiences. Not that I'm trying to generalize now, but I think there is something there where a lot of older generations are still holding it true to the sense of having those experiences. I think the younger generations are finding it a little bit harder. Not everyone, but I think if you were to look at the statistics of different generations, I think you would see that those younger ones are struggling a little bit more with it.
I agree with that. I talked with a lot of Gen Zs, a lot, and I'm working on a novel that is really sort of written for them because what I found was that they were given that my generation, I'm a baby boomer, that my generation has expectations for your generation, and you have never been told why our expectations are valid, and you've never told how to fulfill those expectations. My little way of describing that is that you've been given answers to questions never asked. And and um I want to have that kind of conversation with people your age because what I see, and this is the interaction I'm finding, is that they will agree with me on that. And I will say, well, I'm having that same conversation with my generation, and I'm telling them, if you're disappointed in these younger generations, it's because you created a system that they couldn't function in, and it's your responsibility to fix it. But you'll never fix it because you don't even understand that.
This is
But that
beautifully framed. I have to say, it's beautiful. The way you said that, I'm already writing it down because I think it gives a lot of transparency into what we're talking about. Just giving the answers that the questions they were not aware of. I think it's you hit it right on
so
the
here's a question for you. Do you think your generation wants to have this conversation as a collective group?
Ooh, I'm feeling a lot of weight of being a a
No, no, you're
representative of
just
my
speaking for
generation.
yourself, but you have a
For
sense of
speaking
where
for
you're.
myself, I personally, I maybe because I went through very early on, I went through a lot of work in sectors where I worked with baby boomers and people that quite in a different age gap there. I naturally am more of a let's have a call, let's meet up. I don't want to text. Let's have an in-person conversation. So I've naturally, I think I've been conditioned into understanding that system, as you said, that maybe
Yeah.
different generations are not understanding. So I'm always up for it. I think it's understanding the different types of that um, of these audiences within generation
Uh-huh.
Gen
I agree.
Z, Alpha, that are having different ways of communicating and having those human experiences, but also not ostracizing them and almost making sure that it's okay to do it the way they want it, but also be open and more vulnerable in creating that space for them to understand it a little bit more. I'm not sure if I'm communicating myself
Yeah,
clearly.
I you're saying things to me that I've heard from other people your age.
Okay. Okay.
And and I understand it and I appreciate that and I recognize that as one of the consequences of the way the world has been structured. But
Yeah.
I'm also recognizing that I'm unwilling to allow that to remain the way it is. And the only way I can address that is by having a conversation with people. That's the only way I can do it. I can't go out and change a law. I can't go out and have a product. I can't, I'll never be a movie star or a singing star. I'll never be any of those things. All I can do is have a conversation where I just encourage people to say, okay, this is what you're facing. Don't allow it to dominate your life. Something like that.
Yeah, I think I think this is what we need. I think we need more intergenerational conversations and spaces to have those conversations because
Hmm.
I think there is a lot of wisdom in all the different experiences in
Hmm.
different generations that we can all share. And as and another conversation that's coming up in my mind while we're having this conversation, I think we lost a lot of third spaces for having those conversations,
Hmm.
spaces in real life where we can sit and chat and be human. And to your question before about life experiences and things without agenda, I think we need more of those. I think we do. I think framing things in that sense of having genuine conversations with no agenda and just being deeply human is going to be more and more valuable, um, if not crucial, if not crucial, in ways we're heading right now.
Well, I will have these conversations, and as we're putting together this Eddy Network Live event here, I'm also thinking of we're going to do it at a coffee shop that's adjacent to the campus of one of our local colleges. It's a women's college, and and I have conversations with the college students all the time when I'm in there.
Mm.
And in fact, I'll probably go over there after we get done and work over there for the rest of the afternoon. But what I the conversations I've had with them is like I'm having with you, and they long for it. There's something validating about them as persons, but it also is validating about their experience that says I don't want what I see being offered to me, but I'm not quite sure what I want. And
Hmm.
I want something different. And this is where your innovation thing comes from, which is how do we figure out what it is that we actually want?
Mm.
And I mean, you've gone through a life already where you got to change and you got to decide what you wanted. Not everybody has that opportunity. And
Oh, I fully I always say it, it's such a privilege.
yeah,
It's such a privilege. And I've been asked last year to come back as a visiting lecturer for my university, um, and have those conversations. And I always say, like, listen, you're in a top university of arts in the world. You are able to be in London and have those experiences. Use that privilege to pay back to the communities, to the spaces, be open to create and give back. 'Cause I genuinely, that's the way I am, and that's the way I think. And I, I think we need to talk about it because a lot of times people just forget about the privileges. They're like, it's all right, it's happening. Um, and to your point about, I think there is I yesterday's event, the one that I mentioned, innovation management folks at UAL Central St. Martin's, they such an amazing cohort, and I've got to say, a lot of the innovation grad shows that I've been to before have focused a lot on creating new stuff, new innovation, new things, new products, new services. And this year, I was genuinely so energized yesterday after leaving that grad show, is because rather than focusing on those products and services, the whole cohort, different themes, but the whole cohort focused on relationships, stewardships, regenerations, repair, creating conditions for change. And I think it's silver, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that. And I genuinely said back to them, I think we're in good, innovation is in good hands if we're thinking about those types of innovation. Um,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree with you. I'm I'm very optimistic about the future. It's not going to be easy getting there, but it's going to be great.
Oh, and that's, I'm coming back for circle, coming back to Andy's thinking,
Yeah.
horizon three innovation. Um, I think that's, I fully agree with you. I'm very optimistic about the future, which I probably wasn't so much a year or two ago. I think it was more
Mhm.
deep down into understand, like, well, it's not one individual's future. It's hard. Like, we know we can't make this. And I think I very much went through different phases of that. And right now, where I am, I'm very much optimistic because of those little pockets of change and innovation and drive that I'm seeing, but also personally for where I stand with the work that I'm doing and the focus that I want to focus on, which is regeneration and regenerative health, the thing that I mentioned to you. And
Uh-huh.
I'm just touching the surface. I feel like I'm just touching the surface of that. And I felt very much validated being in such an amazing circle of healthcare professionals during the program that I went into, Andy's program, leading systemic innovation in healthcare, and where those conversations and raising that conversation of regenerative health, age-free thinking, and what it means for health, because a lot of health happens outside of healthcare. Um, Most of the people with chronic disease see their healthcare professions in the 0.01% of their lifetime, and 70% of diseases worldwide are through non-commutable disease. So
Mhm.
it's the ones that we can avoid. And we still talk in healthcare, in systems, in public health, private health, about prevention. How do we prevent disease? How do we identify? But we're not talking about how do we think about thinking in surplus, the thing that I mentioned before, rather than thinking about how do we get from deficit to a baseline of, like, okay, health. And you obviously have amazing work in, like, wellness optimization, biohacking, but that's like the other extreme of that spectrum, which is they're doing amazing. Actually attending a health conference this weekend, which is very much in that space. But I think it's understanding that pocket in that middle of that spectrum of health of and everyday life, and how can we as people regenerate our health. And it's still right now very meta. It's very meta. There are some frameworks that I'm working on, and I'm getting feedback from different healthcare professionals that it's the right way to think about. Because I'm coming from an innovation consultant perspective and someone with lived experience, so it's an interesting combination. And I'm so I'm so optimistic in that space. I'm definitely I think I it's a right question to be asking, even if I don't have answers right now. And I'm fine with that right now.
Let me pose a question for you, or pose an offer. An offer.
Mm. Oh, I love that.
What if you and Andy put together a one-day conference for people in your generation to talk about these things?
Oof,
And
beautiful.
and I would come and I'd be one of your speakers. And we talk about the relational side of this, because
Oof.
the relational side of health is been ignored.
Mm.
But we could do something like that. And um and he would love it. I know he would. I would love it too. And it would give me a reason to come to London and hang out with you.
I love that, and I love that question. I a little bit of a I don't think Andy wouldn't mind if me sharing that. But during the program, I when he came over for the first day, I was very much. I don't have idols in my life. I'm not very much into.
Huh.
I love musicians and I love art and I love different things, but I never was one person to be like, oh my god, this is my hero. And for some reason, when I saw Andy throughout the first day of the program, I came with his just came with my little report that he wrote on horizon thinking in beyond the fog and the thing the things that he worked on in healthcare space. Just came over and I was like, I'm such a big fan. I was like, could you sign that report? I was like, this is the first time in my life, Julia. Very, very much like this is beautiful. Thank you. And we had a very, very lovely conversation about actually what you just said. How can we? He's like, let's chat. How can we reach to that generation in health? So it's interesting that you're coming to a
And
similar
what I'm
conclusion.
what I see is that your generation will be the innovators. I never know what's going to happen in these conversations. Um, I never do, and I'm not saying we're done. I'm not saying we're done because I think we have more to talk about. But I am saying that the unscripted character of this means that it goes wherever it goes,
Mm,
and sometimes it does lead towards we need to go do something. This is something
mm,
important, and sometimes that something happens, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that so much of the structure of the society we live in is already the what our responses are to things are already baked into the structure. And I never bought into that. I refuse to be told what my response to anything should be. And that's just because um, I'm just very, very critical of the way people think, not negatively, but just positively critical. Um, and and people say, "Well, this is the way it is," and I say, "No, it doesn't have to be that way. We can
mm,
change. You can do things differently, you know." And so so now what I am suggesting is that there's a conversation that begins to happen that
Hmm.
is spawned by people coming together and having a conversation. And that's and it would be interesting because what would be interesting would be finding a way to find out what people actually think and being able to capture that in some way that then that becomes a kind of a database of perception
Mm.
that
Mm.
says, well, I mean, obviously we do some kind of survey work, but we'd ask the questions so that people would say, well, this is what I think. I don't know, or this is what I feel, or this is what I've experienced. So we get all that kind of data,
Qualitative, yeah, yeah, and
which
quantitative as
which
well.
says in this generational cohort, this is what they're thinking. And now they're not thinking for everyone. They're not only thinking for the
Yeah.
individual
But
self.
you have to, as you
You have
said,
to start there.
and I fully, you said like this is not the end of it. I fully don't think this is going to be an end of conversation with you. I genuinely don't think this one conversation is going to be the end of it. I definitely want to talk more. And and before I get to that point, fully stand behind critical thinking. It's one of the things that um, we were asked yesterday at that industry event was like, what do you think is going to be a valuable thing in 10 years time from a human perspective? And one of the things that we were putting on board was critical thinking. That way you come into spaces and you're able to critically question why something is the way it is and should it be the way it is, and be open to that. So I fully agree on that. And now back to that last point of our generation. That's quite literally what we do with design thinking is we don't go with the assumptions. We question, we find the answers through that research. We don't solutionize because a lot of the times we think we a lot of times we are somewhat on the right track, but not all of the times. We think we have the answers, and it's let's start with talking to people, having those conversations, talking to people, surveying and starting. And it might sound a bit jarring at first because it's I well, I'll have to look at benchmarking where things are, but I don't think there is a lot of that conversation. And as Andy said, it's so hard uh, to work in a different environment and different generation. Um, so I think it's a good starting point of having that conversation of what it could look like.
Yeah, and other people may find that they want to make a shift in their own careers track because of it. And I think I don't want to be too predictive of what it should be about, of outside of being some within the realm of the healthcare world that has some appeal to people in their 20s and 30s, early 30s. And so, because there's a lot of talk that goes on, but a lot of it is not captured in a way that is productive. And even what I do with the podcast is not productive enough in that regard. Every conversation is a one off, and it doesn't
Mm.
lead to any other conversations. You know, they're not. They're,
Andy, I've got to
I
say you've
know.
done it.
Well, but you see,
Outlier.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
exception. Yeah, the
Yeah.
outlier.
Yeah.
Um, and
But I hear you on that. And I was about to ask you a question of, is there going to be something post those amount of episodes where you're going to put down your thinking after having those conversations and create something, some reflections and retrospective of what those, because I think you had a platter of different experiences throughout those conversations. As you said, you've been talking to healthcare professionals, students. I think I've had a look last week and you talked to a poet. So you have like lovely, lovely different human experiences. And there are definitely things that are shared, and there are different things that you think are valuable and are pushing those conversations in a beautiful manner. And I would love to see what that format could look like.
That's a that's a very good question. It's a very good question, and it's one that I've heard before. And my concern is if we begin to categorize. I mean, I'm
Mm.
categorizing. I have a like a poets playlist. I have a playlist for people from Winston-Salem. I have a first conversations playlist. I have those sort of things, and but those are not subject other than the
Mm.
poets list. They're not subject categories.
Mm.
I
Or even beyond that, beyond subject matters. I think it's the beauty of having this many varied conversations. Like, what are your reflections in
okay.
that?
Well, let me tell you then, and this is what I I posted something. What's today? Thursday. I posted yesterday a thing on I'm writing pieces on the pod about the podcast.
Mm.
And yesterday I posted about the nature of the introductions, the power of an introduction. And I think it's the innovation of all innovations
Mm.
because when you tell me that you want me to meet your friend over there, there's no greater affirmation of your friend than to say, I want you to know this person that I've met.
Mm.
And it's there's no greater affirmation of the person being introduced than to say, I want you to know my friend.
Fully
And
agree with that. Fully
when
agree.
I worked at a college back from between 1988 and 1995, and we moved, our family moved to Western North Carolina in June of 1995. And three guys back where we lived in West Virginia said, when you get there, call my friend up and he'll connect you with some people. And then I knew about introductions, but I didn't know it at a scaling level. This is talking about scale. So I went to see these three guys, and I said, this is what I'm interested in. I'm a leadership guy, and I'm going to start a consulting practice. I want to support the families and organizations and the communities of Western North Carolina. And I said, so, and then and this is the money statement question. Who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce us? And each one of those guys gave me between 10 and 15 names and phone numbers. And I called all of them. That's 35 people. I called all 35 people up. And I was calling everybody that I was being introduced to. And all the business I did in 20 years of being a consultant came from the introductions that began back
Wow.
in 95. I never did any marketing because the relationships mattered. So this idea of introductions is important. The idea that relationships are important, and that, I'm working on that that essay right now.
Oh,
No,
I
no,
love to read it.
and I'll post it in the next
Yes.
probably tomorrow. And then
Mm.
I'm going to write one on the nature of unscripted conversation.
Mm.
So these are the three things that emerge from the podcast. The
And
introduction.
they're so vital. And I've got to say, listening to you in the last few minutes of going through that journey of what came out of those many conversations that you've been having is, I think it's such a lost art of having those introductions. And I've been practicing it because I genuinely I this is a little bit of an anecdotal thing for me, and it's my personal experience. But when I came out of my undergrad university, being in London, being here by myself, totally different environment. At the time, still being asked like, "Oh, why you Americans are coming for our jobs?" It's kind of that weird
Yeah.
dilemma. Um, I wasn't able to through those introductions, find my way into a career. I've done it through a lot of delusional work over the years and a lot of luck, I would say, being in the right places and just having those conversations. So after that experience that I've had, which was very, very harsh, but I flourished, I personally started going out of my way to younger undergrads or people who are just graduating into like, you should be talking to that person or you should be doing like almost pushing it forward. Like I'm happy to introduce, like I'm happy to have that conversation. And I think it's a lost art because I think a lot of people hold their relationships very close to them and they feel very much they feel like they're scared and don't want to open up and share it to even their dear friends. So I'm very interested in what you think about that
I
dilemma.
think that such a huge topic.
It is.
Um,
Sorry.
let's see if I can be simple in what I want to say.
Mm,
I think that um, the challenges of life in our world today, um, I would, I mean, if you're at least interested in kind of academic stuff, I'd recommend reading Hartmut Rosa, German sociologist. Um, he, I would recommend this book, Time and World.
time and world.
It's a better
Love.
introduction than the first books that he wrote, which were massive. But he's writing about how the world is accelerating and with that comes alienation. Some and that those are not actually the words that I would use, but I agree with him. And I think what has happened is that the world that we've lived in for a couple of hundred years has become increasingly detached from itself.
Mm,
And our relationships are not true relationships. They're they're conveniences.
they are, and they're very transactional a lot of the times.
And they're very and so my my recommendation is that we have to decide what we want relationships.
Mm,
And we build relationships by establishing some expectation of what values we share.
mm.
And so I mean we haven't talked about values, but I know what your values are. I know who you are. I know who you are very well. And I would, you know, I would hang out with you all the time because I think we
Oh,
share a lot. I mean,
ditto. I likewise, and and when you're just hearing you speak, I think it's so joyful the way you talk about conversations, relationships, sharing humor experience. I think it brings a lot of joy hearing the way you speak about it.
well,
Person.
what I find also is that people tend to treat their friendships or their family members as possessions that they own, and they must manage them so that they never become
Mm,
disappointing to them.
mm.
And they
I
wrap
think this is so.
their sense of identity in these
Mm,
relationships, and they won't let their relationships live or breathe. And the evidence of that is probably 95% of the films that show up on Netflix and Prime and Paramount Plus and NBC, all these different channels, BBC, they all are presenting a world of where relationships are very broken,
mm,
and it's assumed that these relationships are broken, and when a an encounter between two or three people happens, that is counter to what is a norm, it stands out very much in these shows.
mm,
So I think that's so the points that I'm making. the introductions things is really important, and knowing who to ask to go for the introduction is the key. The second thing is that relationships are not possessions. They are, what would be a good way of describing? They're relationships. That's all they, and if, I think to understand that, we have to see that every facet of our lives is a set of relationships.
Hmm.
Like I have a
Oh yeah.
relationship to Hartmut Rose's book. I have a relationship to my computer. I have a relationship to my stove, to my coffee pot. I have a
Yes.
relationship to my yard. I have a relationship to my neighbors. If we look at these things as relationships, then we're going to care for them and we're going to treat them with respect.
Oof.
And if we treat them with respect,
Music to my ears. Music to my ears, what I'm
and
hearing.
and we care for them so that in with people we build relationships where the trust is the product of the respect and the
100% agree.
mutuality that
100.
we have.
Trust, respect, values, and understanding what a relationship really is. And I think, as you said, we normalize dysfunctions a lot nowadays, where those things that you just mentioned are very hard to find, but they're so worthwhile to be working on. Um,
So
so much food for fun. So much.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and then the third thing is the unscripted conversation.
Mm.
And I did not see this when I started. Um, one of my first guests, John Morley, who is an Irishman who has been living in Silicon Valley and doing consulting work there, coaching work there, and he and his family are just getting ready to move back to Ireland next month.
Wow.
Excited, but he was the one who said, Do you realize that you're doing something that no one else is doing?" And I didn't know, what am I doing? I'm having a conversation. He said, no, you're having unscripted conversations because every conversation we have is has an agenda and has a framework, and we have boundaries, and we're not allowed to go past those. So you're doing something really remarkable. And I said,
He's very right on it. He was very right about that. Very right about that. And yeah,
so the
you're so right.
question,
Most of the time we have an agenda, we have structure, we have a very clear.
and we need that. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
like
we
that's,
do. We do.
we do need that,
Because
but we also need the
spaces
opportunity to
for
be
unscripted.
open.
Yeah.
So that's why the Eddy Network podcast exists, and that's why I see that the, the next stage of this is to create events where people come and there's not an agenda, and I think that's going to have a mind blowing, because nobody's going to believe it, no one's going to trust it, because when someone says, "Well, you're not going to be told that you have to believe a certain thing," they don't believe that. Nobody believes that. They believe everything that they do has some kind of agenda to it, and
Mhm.
they're going to be forced to accept it or reject it, and they just do not go to it at all. So the question is, how do you communicate that this is a genuine, unscripted conversation? And all I can do is say, this is the way I've been doing this for 4 years. And all you have to do is go look at the podcast, and you'll see this is the podcast conversation is what we're going to have when we have the Eddy Network live event.
I think that's all the explaining that you really need to have, because I remember when I watched the first chat that you had with Andy, and I was like, this is such a lovely conversation. It's just flowing naturally. It's going through different areas of life, of professional life, personal life, how things are working out, and then seeing that in different conversations, and it just catches your attention. I was very present. Not to say that and then when I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, I'm not, but I'm usually not that present. Maybe I'm multitasking. I'm doing something, I'm listening. Whereas when I was listening to that, I was fully in that conversation. I
Yeah.
felt very much present. Um, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm very privileged to meet these people. I would never know any of these people without this vehicle of the podcast. And I think people need to understand that. I am really not anyone special at all. Most of
You're
what I do is
you're
not
saying
really.
that. You're
Well,
saying that,
I'm
but I
just
think there's
I'm giving you some false humility. But really, if I had to go out and do what most of these people do, I could never do that. Because what I'm doing is what I know how to do the best. So this
you're
is
doing it.
I'm in my niche here.
You
Okay.
are. You
So
are.
I'm just I recognize where my limitations are. I really
Mm,
do. And I
mm,
live with that. And I don't begrudge people having different things that they do well. I don't feel like I need to be somebody other than who I am.
mm.
And I know because of what people like you have said, and I'm tremendously honored by what you have said. I mean, I I don't it makes me speechless. I'm honored by what you say. And what I mean by that is that people like you are saying things to me that I've never heard before. So maybe there's a fourth thing here, which is when we talk to one another, we need to make sure that we're recognizing them and appreciating them
Mm,
and affirming them and saying thank you to them. I think that's also emerging as one of the characteristics of this
mm.
this program. And it's the guests who are doing it to me, which is really uncomfortable.
Aw.
But I'm grateful for it. And I don't reject it. I don't reject it. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I'm
Yeah.
honored by it. But it is, it is
It
what it
can get you
is.
emotional, really. Like I'm just thinking about it. It's
So I say
yeah.
this to a lot of people. If you put something together, I'll come. Because someone asked me if I had all the money in the world, what would I do with it? I said, I'd buy a corporate jet and fly to go meet people that all over the world that I know. And we do live events. Or we
Mm,
do we do a live event inside their business with
mm,
their team, with
mm.
their, or we could do a live event with their customers.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. I'd rather spend my time with people that I care about, and it just so happens I've found something to do where I have people all over the world that I care about, and that's one of the best things about it. And now
Beautiful.
you're on my list and one of the people at the top of the list. So
Oh God, Ed. I really, really appreciate that. I genuinely do appreciate that.
so I'm
And
going to
as
ask
you,
you a question.
yeah,
You know this question is coming. Who do you know that you think I should know because they should be someone who's a guest on the podcast? And would you introduce us?
that's a lovely question that I would really need to think about it because I already have
I don't expect you to have an answer now.
three people that I'm thinking of in totally different spaces.
And all you have to do is just send us both the same email saying, I want you to meet Ed,
Will
I
do.
want you to meet Sue, or
Will do.
whatever her name is, and I'll take it from there and I'll just invite them on the podcast.
Awesome.
But
Amazing.
yeah, and I'm saying to you all who watch this, if you have people that you think I should be interviewing, email me at ed@eprenegard.com and let me know what you're thinking. Because I'd like to have that conversation with you before you send out a blanket um, invitation to, 40 people or something, which I can't handle. But if you have people that you think I should have on here, send me an email, ed@brenniger.com, and tell me why you're thinking that, and I'll give it a very serious consideration.
Amazing.
Julia, I thank you for being here. I look forward
Thank you.
to
It's been an honor. This has
seeing
been
you
an honor.
soon. it makes me feel like I need to plan a trip to London this fall. Um,
Please do. Please
well, I've
do.
become. Let's put a group together. Let's
Yes.
circle. Let's bring people together, and I mean, we could just do that at a pub. I mean, we don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And then we do an Eddy event, and
We will.
okay,
Manifesting it
well,
or not, but I fully hear you.
and we'll get Andy
Amazing.
to come too.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And I thank you, and I thank you all for watching. This has been a great episode of the Eddy Network podcast. Didn't expect this, um, but I'm grateful for it. And thank you, Julia. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.